Welcome to Keep Going, a podcast about failure and success, hosted by John Biggs. Every week, we talk to an amazing person about a time they failed and what they learned. And remember, when you're going through hell, keep going.
Welcome back to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, I have Kevin Gaskell. He's a chairman, investor, a global motivational speaker. You rebuilt Porsche, is that right? At the age of 32?
Yeah, I led part of it, yeah.
Well, according to the internet, it sounds like you sat on the line and you built them by hand and made everybody happy.
That's why I say I did a bit of it. There were a few thousand other people involved as well.
Okay. So it's fairly rare to get somebody with your breadth and depth of experience. So why don't you tell us just a Cliff's Notes of your story, and then let's go into some of your experiences.
Sure. Well, my story is I'm an engineer by training. Always wanted to be an engineer. Then realized I needed another string to my bow. So I studied for an MBA. Then I studied accountancy. So I'm an engineer and an accountant. And I worked for a large American chemical company for some years, Dow Corning. And then realized that actually I loved cars, and Porsche were looking for somebody who understood a balance sheet and understood a blueprint. I joined Porsche. I was there for 4 or 5, 6 years, growing up through the business. I was in my 20s. And I'd just broken into my 30s, and the business fell to pieces around me. And I was invited by the Porsche Piëch family to talk to them about where this business could go. I expected to get fired. I walked in the room expecting to get fired. I wasn't a director. I was one of the operating managers. And I expressed what I thought they could do with this company. They listened to me. They appointed me as managing director. To my total surprise, spent the next 5 years turning the business around from last in the market to first in the market. Then BMW tapped me on the shoulder. I went and ran a BMW operation, much bigger business, and ran BMW GB in Ireland for 4 or 5 years. Inherited a business doing pretty well, but I felt we could do so much better. So it was about inspiring the team again, getting people to think differently. And we took that business, which had been growing at 3 or 4% per annum and quite nicely making profit. We grew it by 80% over 4 years and a 500% improvement in profitability. And then I decided to step away. I wanted to do my own company. I wanted my own business. I had this dream that I could use this funny internet thingy to change the world of automotive. And so I quit. And I was backed by some American investors to create a company called Cars Direct Europe, which is an operating business in the US. And it was all very exciting. And I stepped away and I dropped everything and I set out to build this company. And 6 months later, the investors pulled out and said, actually, Kev, thanks for what you've done. We've decided we're staying in the USA. And so I was left with nothing really, left with a business plan, 3 colleagues and no job. We took that business on. I bought it for £1. We took it on. And a few years later, 5 years later, we sold it for a 9-figure sum. And I retired and I lasted half an hour. And I started, it's true, because somebody called me and said, hey, you just sold your business. I got an idea. And off we went again. And I'm on my 15th company now. And my latest one, just this weekend, we're 8 years into it, but it's a fiber business. We build fiber networks. Great company, great team, and we're in the top 30 fastest growing technology businesses in the UK, which is pretty exciting. So that's going really well. And outside of that, I do crazy expeditions. So I climb big mountains. I walk to the North Pole, the South Pole. I've set the world record for the fastest rowing boat across the Atlantic, and also just this year across the Pacific. So that's me in a nutshell.
I feel like we have to cut this short because this is supposed to be some sort of failure at some point, but it sounds like this is
there's plenty of those.
list of absolute.
Failure comes before you fight your way out of it.
Okay, so there are a few concepts that I think I like to bring up when I hear stories like this. There's first the idea that the entrepreneur can't have multiple ideas and can't have multiple serial ideas. And I think you've put that idea to rest. And also just like, tell me about some of those moments when like Cars Direct folks didn't want to work with you anymore. Tell me about some of those moments when it felt like the bottom fell out. So let's start with that.
Well, that was terrifying because I'd given up what was probably the best job in the UK automotive industry, essentially in Europe. And I'd given that job up and all the perks and benefits that go with being in a role like that, and I'd stepped out into a rented office with me and a desk and a telephone and a couple of guys who I knew and a lady who I knew to create this new way. And we were just getting into it and explaining how Europe was different to the USA, that the distribution laws are different over here with this block exemption thing. And I explained that to my US shareholders, and they said, that's very interesting, Kev, because we're going back to the US. Thanks very much. And at that point, where'd you go? Because you've got no money. You've got an idea. You've got to pay the mortgage. I had 2 young kids and I had a lifestyle that I needed to support. And so we managed to negotiate with our investors to keep some funds, not much, a couple of $100,000. And we used that to sponsor the business and get going. And we went to friends and family and said, hey, look, we've got this idea. We're building this. It's very exciting. Would you like to be part of it? And we raised £500,000, that's $700,000. And we built the business on the back of that. No banks would touch us because we had no history in building businesses. I mean, my career track record was in corporate. And so no banks wanted to touch us. But we built it on the back of the funds, and we paid back 200x to the people who invested in us. My dad's never forgiven me because I didn't let him put any money in, because he's not a rich guy, and he'd have lost, there's the risk he could have lost it. So that was it. It was a horror story. But, you sit down and say, do I really believe in this thing? Do I really believe I can take this to something special? And the answer for the 4 of us was, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We believe this sector is ripe for change. We're creating something that is different, is distinct. And whilst our first audience that we thought we would capture would be the consumer, the car buyer, it wasn't, because at that point, consumers wouldn't buy online. They were afraid of it. So we went to the fleet sector, fleet operators, and we became the backbone of that whole sector. Their sourcing and distribution and the used car disposal systems were all based on our platform. So we became the backbone. And now wherever I go in any car dealership in the UK, our logo is stuck behind the service counter. And I look at it and I smile and I think, yeah, it was a good idea. It's a good idea. But a lot of sleepless nights.
So that's an interesting question. You guys knew that this would work, right? It felt like, and a lot of entrepreneurs come in to the space and they're like, I want to build a Fitbit for dogs, which is kind of like my go-to for like kind of a frivolous idea that could help people, but you're going to sell an X number of objects. But they're stuck on this idea for Fitbit for dogs. How did you guys move into a place that you absolutely knew would work, right? Because I mean, fleets are huge in Europe. Almost everybody has everybody gets a fleet car, right? Everybody gets a car from their job because salaries are a little bit lower. And how did you know that going into that space and taking over that space and even just continuing to fight was the way to go in this specific situation?
Yeah, well, we didn't know. That's the first point. We didn't know. We felt that we would go after the consumer. And as I said, the consumer was very resistant, very hesitant to buy a car through the internet. So we realized that wasn't going to be the way that we would grow this business. We were approached by a tire distributor who said, hey, we like your system. Could you do tires? And we said, yeah, it's just a part number. Whether it's a car or a tire, doesn't matter. It's a part number. So we started by building a small platform for a tire distributor. And that gave us the working capital to keep going. That gave us another 6 months of life. And we challenged ourselves to understand the industry. I'd been in the industry for 15 years by then, so I kind of knew the motor industry. But we challenged ourselves to realize where were the big opportunities. And we zeroed in. Everything we thought about came back to the fleet operators because they are huge in Europe and they had massive operating costs. They were dysfunctional. They'd have 200 people in a back office on telephones sourcing cars for corporate drivers, which is where the majority of their business is. And we said, no, we can replace that with a platform. We can replace all of that with a platform. And we're going back 20 years now, and it wasn't done then. It wasn't accepted as the way to go. But we proved the case to a couple of fleet sector, and once they got excited by it and realized what a difference it could make to their business in efficiency, in cost saving, in marketing, in opening up new opportunities, in speed of service, in improved processes, they were evangelists for our product, and it spread very quickly. And to the point where we had to run fast to keep up with it. And somebody in our business had a really great idea, which was instead of selling a product and then getting paid for it, we said to the car dealers who wanted to sell their products through our platform, why don't you buy tokens? So we're charging you $25 every time we sell a car for you. Just lodge $5,000 with us, and then we'll draw down on that as we sell cars. We don't have to keep sending you an invoice. They thought it was a great idea. But of course, for us, you've got a couple of thousand dealers sending you a lot of money. You've suddenly got a lot of cash. And that is what paid for the development of the business.
You basically had interest-free loans from all these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
And you made interest. So these sorts of situations was your career luck, or was it training? Was it preparation? What was it?
I was lucky at Porsche. I was in the right place at the right time. I think a little bit of it was courage. When you're invited in to meet the Porsche and the Piech families who own the whole kit and caboodle, and they're giving you a hard time, you can either wilt or you can think, you know what, screw this. I've got a family to support. I'm not responsible for the fact your business is going badly, so I'm going to tell you what I really think. And I went in there expecting a 10-minute exit interview, and I was in for 4 hours telling them what I thought they should do with their company. So that bit was preparation because we had prepared. I walked in there with my financial colleague. I was running the operations. Armin was running finance. And we walked in there together with a plan that we had thought about. We had created this plan with our team to think, we can change this business and we can change it for the better. So that was preparation. A lot of it was resilience, having the grit to keep going. The press were killing us at that point. And so that was front page news. Our stock, I had 3 years unsold inventory, 3 years worth of new cars. And that photograph was all over the press. So the press were killing us. And so we had to just dig deep and stay positive and keep the team with us. We made some big changes to the business. We simplified the business. We cut our costs by 50%. Some big and tough decisions we made very quickly. But some of it's luck. You make your own luck, but you got to keep fighting. You just got to keep fighting.
Now you've done, as you said, you've done 15 companies. The average VC and somebody in mid-market city, I'm talking like a Chicago or like a Paris or something like that, would see that and say, oh, this is a flighty person who's just bounced from thing to thing. Aside from saying, look at all the money I made these folks and look at all my exits. Aside from that, how do you explain that sort of career to somebody who's kind of expects exactly what you described, resilience and to keep going, whereas it would seem on paper that person is jumping from thing to thing?
Well, I was actually doing some of them in parallel. I was building the world's biggest automotive data company for a private equity sponsor at the same time as I was building my own business, because I got dragged in by PE who said, hey, we got this thing, could you just come and have a look at it for us? It's a 2-year project. And I wasn't getting paid out of my own company, so I went and did this thing to earn the income to stay alive. So I was doing both. I was burning that candle at both ends. And these days I've got 3 or 4 on the go at the same time, because these days I'm investing in and chairing companies. So today I think I've probably got 6 on the go at the same time. So my average tenure in these businesses is somewhere between 5 and 7 years, 8 years. My biggest one today, I've been in for 8 years. So I don't flip-flop around. And I want to build companies that are solid. I want to build businesses so that when the time comes for me to go off and a new investor to come in, that business continues to grow and people have careers and people enjoy building a great company. We don't build something so it falls over the minute we take our hands off it. We build solid companies where we've got great teams. We've got clarity on what we're setting out to achieve, and we're successful because we're providing a great service. It's not about asset stripping. I've never asset stripped in my life. It's about building a solid team. It's about reestablishing with clarity and simplicity a vision of success for the company and dealing with the truth. Let's all realize where we're really at with this business. There's only one version of the truth. So let's make sure we deal with the truth and we'll build from there.
What do you think about the current mania for, well, first off, AI, right? AI seems to have, either they've put a fear of God into vast majority of middle management, and they've also changed the entire business market, right? You can't get investment for anything that's not AI. I just talked to a buddy of mine who doing point of sale for HVAC and like contractors, and he wants to change it to like AI wallet instead of iWallet.
Yeah.
Because it seems like that's the only thing that's going to work. What happens now? What happens over the next few years while we kind of muddle through this AI situation?
Well, I think AI is still in its early stages. It's extremely competent, capable, credible tools that are coming out of it. I do despair at investors who act like a herd. They chase the dot-com bubble around. Now they chase the AI bubble around. And how many of them will make money? I don't know, but a lot of them will not make money. Mm-hmm. So I do get frustrated by it. At the end of the day, you've got to produce a great product and a great service to keep the clients engaged, entertained, and happy. And if AI plays part of improving your processes, your efficiency, whatever it is, that's great. But it doesn't replace people. I genuinely don't believe it replaces the creativity of people. In some of my companies, we are using AI, and partially, in some places, we're using it cynically, like your colleague, to say, well, this is AI, because people then give us more credibility. Actually, it is AI, but it isn't changing our business as such. I hear all these stories. There are going to be more multimillionaires created in the next 5 years with AI than ever. I hear all that stuff, but they said that about .com, and they said that about things, and the railways and telephones, and there's a whole history of these peaks and troughs. So I'm a bit cynical about it. I use it every day. I'm here. I've just spent the last hour transposing information from a big meeting I was at. AI is doing that work for me. That's great, but it's a tool, and it's just a tool. And let's keep sight on what it is we're setting out to provide to our customers. AI is. How many of them are making money at the moment? I don't know. How many will make money? Not many. It's a tool.
I mean, I think we're so. I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, it's the view between when we were coming up, 80s, the Atari 800 XL, the change between the IBM PC coming into like the Ataris and all the home computers, and the PCs coming into the office. As you said, a couple years before, it was a bunch of phones and a bunch of pieces of paper, and folks were using huge file cabinets to store all the information. And all of a sudden, it switched, right? It switched to like a compressed environment. But that's almost like a compression algorithm. That wasn't a huge change. It was just I could find something faster, and it's all in this one little disk. Would you argue that AI is a slightly different animal than that sea change in business and that sea change in culture? Whereas AI now gives us, instead of a bicycle for the mind, a rocket for the mind.
I do believe it's an extremely powerful set of tools. I do. As individually, I'm one of those people who plays, as my kids call it, you play with ChatGPT, Kevin, you think you're doing stuff with AI. Well, it's doing things for me. It's doing stuff that would normally take me hours to do manually. I can do with these tools very quickly, and that's fantastic. It improves my productivity. Could it help me to create a new business? Well, people tell me it can, but it can only deal with existing information. It reprocesses existing information. Whereas I believe new businesses are about finding, don't look for market share, look for opportunity share. Where's the new opportunity? Where's the gap? And, I talked about my fiber business. We've got a whole bunch of companies in Europe fighting for home broadband, and they're cutting each other's throats on price, and they're just fighting each other. And we said, no, we're not going to do that, because that's low margin. It's hard work. We're going to do B2B. So we don't build the side roads, we build the motorways. And we've been incredibly successful doing that. And now, would AI have told me to do that? Would it have told me how to find a smaller niche within a busy market? I don't know. We use it in our business. And I was in one of our team meetings the other day where the technology chief was talking about how he can improve process with it. And that's great. And it's a tool. But it's a tool like this is a tool. Like the laptop I'm speaking to now is a tool. And you and I remember when they came on board and we said, the world's changed. Yeah, the world got easier. I can carry my world around in my bag now. My office is wherever me and my laptop are. That's my office these days. And that's great. But AI, I still think there's some way to go before it settles down.
Okay, so final question. How do we clone a Kevin Gaskell? How does someone become you right now? Somebody's sitting in a cubicle somewhere and realizes they want to change. How do they do that?
So I just created a platform called Smarter Britain. And it's aimed, and I've already been part of building one of these in South Africa, where we've trained 20,000 entrepreneurs in the last 10 years. And Smarter Britain, I've now launched in the UK, where any entrepreneur who wants to build a business can come in, and we lead them through the process. We give them support, we give them mentoring, and it's all free. And that's how we're doing it, because there aren't enough of me to answer the phone every time somebody calls. I've poured my knowledge. I've got a team of people together. We've created smarterbritain.co.uk. Go in there. It's free. All the information's free. All the support is free. And we'll lead you through the process. Absolutely take you through. And I speak at universities, and it's great. You know what's fun is I spoke at a university the other day, and I said, you could do a business on the side. I said, how many of you have thought about doing that? And about half the room, I was speaking to 120 undergrads, half the room put their hand up, and I said, how many are actually doing it? And a third of the room kept their hands up. Mm-hmm. So these days, what technology is enabling is for young people to start businesses. It's just them and a technology solution, drop shipping or whatever it is. So I'm really positive about the future of entrepreneurs if the government would just stay out of the way. Just get out of the way and let us go on.
Well, it's funny that you had a ready answer. That's actually great. You've answered every single question, Kevin. This has been amazing. It's nice to hear somebody's success story all the way down. You don't think there's ever going to be a chance when you're like, I don't know, you're going to hit the wall. You're not going to be able to climb Mount Everest or something because you're a bit too sleepy.
Well, I don't think it's about being sleepy. I found the Pacific. We finished the Pacific in July.
Oh my God!
And man, that was brutal. And so my age now, that was brutal. So I think I'm past rowing oceans and climbing big mountains. I've done it since I was 12. It's time to go and do some more adventures now. And I got some ideas for what that would be. It just won't be rowing for 40 days, nonstop.
Well, keep us posted when the next big idea. Maybe we can hop in. All right, Kevin Gaskell, thank you for joining us. Your website is kevingaskell.com. Is that right?
That is correct.
kevingaskell.com, speaker, chairman, investor, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you for joining us.
John, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for the invitation.
This has been Keep Going. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Keep Going, a podcast about success and failure. Remember, Keep Going is entirely listener supported. If you're listening to this, please head over to keepgoingpod.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast for as little as $5 a month. This is a labor of love, and every little bit helps. Thanks for listening.
Pacing back and forth for 27